This right here has been one of my dream lenses. Hey, how's it going, guys? Hope you guys doing well. So in this video, we're gonna go over pros and cons as usual about this lens, but we're gonna also talk about some things that are not commonly mentioned. For example, this is not quite 1.6 times the squeeze. Now, Sirui did send this lens to me. However, this video is not sponsored. In fact, I had this for like almost a month now, so I used it in a variety of situations. If you saw my last video, I featured this lens on a very light car rig. In fact, this was probably perfect for it because the weight of this, which we'll talk about. And also, I brought this lens to film my kids, and I also brought it to a wedding to film some reception footage. So yeah, let's talk about it. Now, first pro is gonna be this lens is a constant 1.6 squeeze. Now, I'm gonna put a little asterisk on that. We're gonna talk about that later in this video. But in the past, when I was reviewing Sirui lenses, the APS-C formats, and one of the drawback of those 1.33 squeeze is that depending on where you focus, the squeeze factor changed, and that gets kind of tricky on post because if you want to keep everything very, realistic in life, yeah, you have to do a lot of work. Whereas in this one, it is constant whether you focus close or far, so I really appreciate that. And of course, we're gonna talk about the size of this thing. I mean, just to compare, okay, here's a regular, I don't have any regular soda, guys, so this is what I have. This is regular size can, and if you guys see this, it is smaller and thinner. That's unreal. So when it comes to sizes, and I don't know about you guys, but as I'm filming more and more, maybe it's my age, but I really appreciate smaller things now. So this lens is very discreet. When I went to that carnival, like no one bat an eye, guys. I mean, I had this really, really nice anamorphic lens. I'm filming my kids running around pretty comfortably, and I don't feel as self-conscious because I know if this lens was like 4 times bigger, I think I would have been much more self-conscious. Now, without the lens caps, this lens weighs a little bit above 400 grams, and that is insane to me as a full frame anamorphic lens. So this lens weight is perfect when you're mounting on a car rig, or if you want to just travel with this. Yeah, this is awesome, guys. And just because it's light, they didn't skip on the quality. Now the top part of this is carbon fiber, so I really, really love that. But the bottom part is all aluminum, and this focus ring and the aperture ring feels really solid. It's smooth to spin it, but it's pretty stiff. So one of the things I want to note is that when I put this on a car rig, and we have some bumpy roads, I was a little bit worried that the focus ring and the aperture ring was going to start spinning, but it did not. It stayed put. Of course, you have this gear, and this gear is also aluminum, so if you want to throw in a motor on this is perfect. And the reason why this is dream come true for me is the fact that this is full frame. So when I was reviewing those APS-C lenses, I mean, the size was correct. Maybe not the weight, because those are pretty heavy. And those are made for a crop sensor, so I did my whole, clear image zoom and try to get the most out of the sensor. But this now takes advantage of the whole entire full frame sensor. Although this lens is marked as 35mm, this is a very wide lens. So horizontally, the field of view is about 22mm, and vertically, the field of view is about 35mm. So when I did test though, I would say it's a little bit less. So I think it's about 33mm if you correct the distortion especially. But still, you get the best of the both worlds because you get this wide angle of view, but your depth of field and the bokeh characteristic is similar to a 35mm. In fact, this lens is so wide, it went beyond my Sharpity Sharp test chart. Next, of course, we gotta talk about the flare. So there are 2 flare flavors on this lens. So there's the regular blue streak that we're used to seeing on anamorphic lenses, and this is the neutral flare. So at first, I wasn't sure which one I was gonna pick because they gave me a choice. But I thought the neutral flare was pretty cool because it takes in the color of the light source. Of course, liking the flare color is subjective, but for me, I think this is a little bit more diverse in terms of all the variety of projects I'm gonna get in the future. So I'll put a bunch of sample footage at the end of the video, but something to note is that the flares are really well controlled. So unless you shine a light directly at this lens, you're not gonna get a lot of Michael Bay, J.J. Abrams vibe. Again, it's subjective, but I like that better because I know the image is not gonna get washed out by every single light source there is. Because the image coming on this lens is fantastic. So it's very sharp in the center. Obviously, towards the edges as a very wide angle lens, there's some distortion and softness, but in the center, I would compare this focus to almost similar to the Sigma 24-70 DG-DN. That's a pretty sharp lens, so it can compete with that in the center. But if you like a little bit of softer look, you can always put a filter on it, or you can soften on the post. I'd rather have a sharp image in the beginning and being able to soften it later. Now, before we talk about the cons of this lens, one of them being T2.9, but because it's T2.9, it's able to control the chromatic aberration fairly well, especially in the center. On the edges, you start to see a little bit, but it's very minimal. But let's talk about some interesting things, such as some drawbacks of this lens. So the first con is gonna be the minimal focus distance. So minimal focus distance on this lens is 3 feet or 0.9 meters. Now that might sound like a lot, especially if you're used to spherical lenses. Now anamorphic lenses, that's pretty common to have a little bit longer minimal focus distance, but I gotten used to using diopters. In fact, I already had a set because the anamorphic lenses from the past, but I did get a diopter set that's larger than this filter thread. So this is 58mm thread, which is pretty small. So I recommend getting something a little bit larger so you can use it for other lenses too. But I'm gonna say something interesting here and say that I like the fact that the minimum focus distance is 3 feet, because 3 feet is something that's very easy to target. So what I would do in a run and gun situation, I would just spin this whole thing around so it's locked in at 3 feet minimal focus distance, and my arm's about 2 feet, so 1 feet beyond this I know is tack sharp focus. If I can get the subject to stand on that exact spot and just bring this lens to focus on them really fast in a run and gun situation, I think that's kind of useful as a very common focus distance. But that's how I've been using it for my kids, because I just know they're in focus as long as they stay there for like a split second and then just go. So let's talk about that T2.9. Because this is a 35mm especially, you're not gonna get a whole lot of like bokeh-licious image out of this. The bokeh's definitely there, but if you're looking for those oval shaped bokeh everywhere, I think those are a little bit more reserved for like the 50mm and above. So I'm really hoping Sirui makes a Saturn 50mm or 75mm. That'd be like an awesome set, but you know, that'd be even more dream come true later. So something to keep in mind if you're looking for this oval shaped bokeh, it's there, but you really have to get close to the subject to make that happen. Okay, we finally get to talk about that 1.6 times squeeze with the asterisk. So this is technically 1.575 times squeeze. And how do I know? I am geeky. So I decided to take a perfectly round circle and I made a little transparent color mat that's also perfectly square, try to match that exactly and find out how much do I have to stretch to get that line up exactly. The margin of error is probably like a 1 pixel range, so it's pretty much on the perfect side. And that's how I came up with that 1.575, and the number actually works out great because if you shoot with Sony, for example, I'm shooting with Sony a7S III, so regular 4K is 3840 by 2160, right? So if I were to squeeze that out by 1.575, you get 6048 times 2160. So I set my sequence as that resolution because Premiere Pro does not have a 1.6 times on the modify interpret footage menu. Unfortunately, there's 1.33 but not 1.6. So when you stretch your image like this, you're gonna notice some pincushion distortion, especially around the edges. So as you can see, the edges, that line, yeah, that blue line is supposed to be straight, but it is curved as if someone like sat in the middle of the image. But this is fixable in Premiere Pro. The effect is called lens distortion. Now I had to play with this quite a bit, so I spent like an hour trying to figure out what is the most optimal. I mean, you can't get that line to be perfectly straight without distorting the middle too much. So I prioritize where the horizon will be usually and try to straighten that edges out as much as possible. So this is the setting I came up with, and you might be thinking, say, that's a lot of work. First you gotta like de-squeeze the whole thing perfectly, and now I gotta throw in some lens distortion effect. There's many steps just to get that footage each clip. So I made a little preset for you, and no, this preset is not $29.99. It is free completely. So let me show you this. Here is a sequence already set. This is 1.575 times de-squeeze. So let's go ahead and drop a footage down here. So this is a Saturn 35mm, of course. And as you can see, this is what it looked like before you do anything with it. And guess how easy this preset is. So let's see, Sirui 35mm Saturn preset. Bang! Done. So the entire image has been de-squeezed and the edges been straightened out as much as possible by leveling out the horizon as much as possible without distorting. And when you put in all this effect, originally, this is what it's gonna look like. So it does make the image a little bit smaller. So I had to scale up slightly, and then I had to also change the position of the image. Again, it's a lot of work if you do this manually. So I have a preset for you down in the description. If you download it and just drop it in a Premiere, it works fine. If you're a DaVinci user, you can probably make your own preset at that point. But when you make a preset like this, it's just more pleasing to use the lens like this. And you can tweak it to however you like. I know this is gonna be a hot topic because I know people are looking for some imperfection on these anamorphic lenses sometimes, but to me, I would like to have a perfectly circular image in the center. So Sirui is not wrong when they say 1.6 times squeeze. It is 1.6 times squeeze classification. Oh, they're not gonna list every single decimal, obviously, and depending on the range of the focal length, like if they make a 50mm, 75mm, it's gonna vary a little bit. And again, this is personal preference. Even some spherical lenses, they're not perfect, so use it at your discretion. And that's kind of like the point of this lens, I think. So this, because the size and the fact that it makes beautiful images, and I'm in love with this lens because of it. So I'm having a lot of fun. It's been a long time since I had this much fun using a lens, and this lens does go on sale quite often, so I'm gonna link several stores down in the description so you guys can compare. But for this quality, I think that's a pretty good price. And I'll be keeping this lens, so you'll see this lens throughout my videos in the future. In fact, I'm gonna talk about how I use this lens on a car rig in a little bit more detail, so I have that video coming up soon. So make sure you subscribe. And if you found any of this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. It means so much to this channel. Thank you so much. Until next time, stay squeezy.